these are notes on carbohydrates, so this expands on what you've already learned. So if you didn't take the Introduction to Macromolecules notes, you probably want to go back and do that first, because there will be some terms that you maybe don't understand, or some things I expect you to know that if you haven't taken the intro ones, you won't. So some general things about carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are molecules made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And that's not to say that any molecule made of these three elements is a carbohydrate. So if you remember, ethanol is made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, but that's a different classification of molecule. That is an alcohol. This is a carbohydrate, but carbohydrates are, we could say, a subset of the molecules made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And yeah, there you go. Anyway, some can be broken down to provide energy for cells. So we talked about the 4 calories per milligram that you get from carbohydrates. Some can also, though, be part of cellular structures. So there's 2 kinds of carbohydrates: monosaccharides, which are monomers, and then we'll talk in a minute about polysaccharides. But those are the 2 main classifications of carbohydrates. So monosaccharides are all monomers, and they're simple. Oh, this should say simple, not simply. Sorry about that. They're simple sugars with 5 or 6 carbons in a ring formation. So some you may have heard of are glucose. Glucose is really important in our cells. It's important in cellular respiration. It's important in photosynthesis. We're going to be talking a lot about glucose. And so this is glucose's structure here. It's a 6-carbon ring, but you'll notice that 6th carbon is part of a branch chain versus part of the actual ring. Over here, you've probably heard of fructose. Fructose is a simple sugar that's found naturally in fruits, but you've also maybe heard of like high fructose corn syrup. Maybe some of your parents have said we don't, eat things with high fructose corn syrup in it, or and that has a higher than natural concentration of fructose in it. And then we have galactose, which is another simple sugar. It's found in, you'll notice it, part of the word galactose has lactose in it. Part of this is lactose, and it's actually found in a lot of milk products. It's not lactose. Lactose is actually a polysaccharide, but it's a simple sugar that is found in dairy products, and it's less sweet than fructose or glucose. Just some interesting things. But anyway, these are all monomers of carbohydrate monomers. So then polysaccharides are polymers of monosaccharides, meaning chains of monosaccharides. So for example, starch is a polymer, and it's a polymer that of glucose with a branched chain here. So you can see it's not just a linear chain. And you'll notice, remember earlier I told you that the vertexes were carbon, and so these are all going to be carbon. But then if you remember back to glucose, we talked about how glucose's 6th carbon is actually branching off here, and this is an oxygen. So that's why there's an O here, because that's not a carbon, that's an oxygen. Cellulose is another polymer. This is the polymer that makes up a lot of plant fiber, and you'll notice it's a pretty rigid structure here. That's one of the reasons plant fiber is so hard for us to break down. Fiber, so this is when we say fiber, and maybe your doctor says you need to get more fiber. They wouldn't say that to you in 8th grade, but as you get older they may say, hey, you need to get more fiber. Fiber tends to pass through us, but as it does, it absorbs a lot of water and helps regulate our digestive system, even though we don't generally break fibers down. So that's another polymer. So here also, you've perhaps heard of sucrose. So sucrose is the main component in table sugar. And you can see here is a polymer that's made of 2 different monomers. So here's our glucose again, and then here's our fructose again. And then as this here bonds, so as this right here, this oxygen kind of bonds there, and we'll look at how that happens in class later. That makes sucrose. So sucrose is a smaller polysaccharide, certainly, if you compare that to the starches we saw earlier that, were these long chains, or the cellulose, which was many glucoses. Sucrose is a little smaller. It's still a polysaccharide because it's more than one. But you can see, I wanted to put this example in to show you a polysaccharide, a polymer that had different monomers making it up. So as always, please put questions on the comment section of the YouTube or ask them in class. And you're going to want to move on to lipids next.